Alrighty, hey, it's King Philidor, and we're back some more with some stuff from Checks and Captures 2.0. This game is from the Charlottesville Open 2012. My opponent happens to be one of the Big Nesh twins. They're a couple of really sharp young men that played in our scholastic system, worked their way up, and are currently both over 2,200. If I check, they may even be over 2,200. I happened to catch him when he was running around 1978. And in this particular game, it starts out again as a London. There's a couple things that are regular in the position for the London. The queens have been exchanged by him playing queen to b6 and me playing queen to b3. He took, I took here, and then this pawn is supposed to push. When we look at the position, let's go ahead and hop right into it. We got to look at our checks and captures, and for kings and queens and rooks. So right now we don't even have queens on the board. So we start with the rooks. We got one check here, and no more checks. Alright. Now captures. Of course we count that as a capture too. This is a capture, this is a capture, and we have a capture here, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 captures to examine. Now once we start examining this capture right here, we just see rook takes, nah. Try to double up the rooks on there, isn't going to make any difference either because the knight's holding strong at c8. Then we come over here and we look at bishop takes, pawn takes, knight takes. Nah. And then we look at, let's see, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. Nah. Alright. How about, let's go back again. Knight takes, king takes. Knight comes up, and king moves, and ooh, look at that little x-ray attack on that e6 pawn. And now when we look at that x-ray attack on the e6 pawn, which should start to occur to us. Now, one of the things that I'm going to be doing differently for you that I hadn't been doing up until this example is you will always see a star on whose turn it is to move. I know I've been telling you, look at the position, can you tell me what will happen? But I've been asking you to look at it for both sides for a reason. You know, a couple of them you couldn't tell who was supposed to win. One of them was sitting there in the face of mate and one. But when it's your turn, whose move do you need to be focusing on, yours or your opponent's? That's right, yours. And only after you look at yours do you look at theirs. But here we go with the idea that you're not just supposed to look at the checks from the initial position, you have to look through them all through the combination. That's what the visualization process is all about. So knight takes pawn, king takes pawn, knight comes up here, check. No matter where the king goes, I'm going to have a knight takes pawn check under our system. So remember we said the minimum length of a combination is a what? White, black, white, black, white. Or a black, white, black, white, black. Here, we're going to find our combination goes a little bit further than that. And I promised you that your combinations would start getting longer once you started looking at the checks and captures. So let's take a look. Knight takes. Hey, if you see what's coming, you may just decide that a pawn is enough misery all by itself and just start trying to take in, restore the mobility of your pieces by maybe playing here or taking and giving yourself something else to do. I don't know whether he saw it or not, but he took here. And after that comes check. He played here. And after that comes check. And if you're new to this concept with what we're doing with checks and captures, and you're going, that's not check. you're just attacking the rook. In our system, that's a check. So the rook plays here. Bishop takes. Pawn takes. Play here, check. Rook plays over. And now it's just up to us to go ahead and pick off the other pawn. And we're going to have a really nice combination here. Because by the time we get done, once we add this pawn to the mix, we're going to have actually gotten a rook and 3 pawns for 2 pieces. So technically speaking, we've stolen an exchange. That's big, 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 huge, 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 huge. And the game, due to my inability to take and solve everything fast enough, ultimately wound up in a draw. Why was my opponent, who was rated 120 points higher than me, so willing to accept a draw in that position? Well, let's face it. After a combination like that, you ought to be a little afraid of me too. And the beautiful part is, let's look at it from a technical point of view for all the stuff that we're talking about. We looked at the checks and captures. That's a capture at least, so I got a pawn. What are you going to do about it? So that's a white, black, and then every move after this is a check. Check. So that's white, black, white. Then we got white, black, white, black, white. So after white, black, white, black, white, this is the position I want to hold in my head. These are the positions that experts and masters are holding in their head. And, you know, even maybe a little bit further, but I've gone a minimum of a white, black, white, black, white, and holding this position in my head. If that board is lit up like I told you it should be, it's clear that the rook has no place to go and is going to die on the sword with either the knight, the pawn, or the bishop. When it goes here, it still put itself in check. Now the king can't do that, but the rook and queen can. So that's white, black, white, black, white, and then black, white, and black, white. If you want to do it that way, I preferred to do it with white, and then he came over here, black, and then I go here, white. So how many moves is that? My goodness. That was 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and then 6. So 6 moves deep. And when you become a super duper, remember I told you every check and every capture every time, regardless of what you think, whether they can take you or not, whether it makes sense or not, for kings and queens and rooks, is part 2. When we get to part 3, you'll see that there's actually still checks left on the board, and more checks than you're counting. But thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this example. Remember, what do we do? Anytime that we take and solve a puzzle, we always put everything back in the original position. Make sure that we train our eye to be able to take it and see the combination. Remember it so that if we saw it next week, next month, next year, we'd still be able to solve it. And I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. In analysis, I did learn that from now on, if I'm going to get in this kind of a situation, With this here like this, the rook is better placed here instead of here. That way I'd have been able to pick off anything that gets stuck right away. So thank you very much for your time. Hope you enjoyed it. Our next video is going to be very, very interesting. So hope you're looking forward to it. See you soon.